Hey, everybody, we got everybody. No, we still got people walking around. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I don't know what to tell you. So, um, okay, welcome this evening to the North Austin Photographic Society. NAPfS is otherwise known, or a bunch of people get together and talk about cameras and photos. So this evening we have our guest speaker this evening is okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, world renowned. He's informed me that he has been the personal photographer of Prince Charles, now King Charles, because he couldn't do the Queen because she had someone else. So, and if you don't believe that, then I'll just introduce Roy Nierdieck as our guest speaker. He is part of the Austin PPA. He's been a professional photographer in the area for at least a couple of years. A couple of years, yeah. And so Roy is going to talk to us tonight about from vision to print. And at that point, did they mic you up?
Yeah,
they did. Okay, they mic'd him up. Okay, at this point, let's see. Any other announcements before I get too far? Oh, we have announcements.
Is that on?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
all right. Good.
You work on that. Clay Laban, membership coordinator. So if you have any questions about your membership, I'll try to help. We have new members, Richard Gaines, who joined. I don't believe he's here tonight, but we do have William Dickey, and he's not here, right? So he's a new member, and Robert Cartwright has joined, and Robert's in the back there. So welcome him. And have I missed anybody who is new or has a guest? I think we're okay. So thanks for keeping your membership current. I appreciate it very much. You can always join by going to the website and looking up how to use PayPal. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, and I have one other announcement. I did send out, Bill's over here going like this. I'm supposed to pay attention to him. He said, you get to run it. So hold on, hold that thought, Bill. Okay, so one other thing. I've been down to Palmetto State Park, which is just south of Luling by like 10 miles or so. And it's a cute little park. It's 270 acres, so it's not big. You can't get lost because the trails are beautiful. They're flat. You can't even get exhausted except the heat. And the mosquitoes might carry you away. But I sent out a note through the organization's email that if you'd like to come along, I will be glad to meet up with you on Saturday, the 27th. That is a week from this Saturday, at Hester's Crossing at the credit union there. It's in the email. But couple hours of it's about an hour and a half to get down there. Couple hours of shooting. We could stop in Luling on the way back. They've got a lavender farm, not very big. It's smaller than this room. And then there's always Lockhart on the way back to stop and have lunch, take pictures there, do whatever. But about 7:30ish or so, we'll leave from Hester's Crossing on Saturday, the 27th, if you'd like to come. So, and it's be forewarned, you can lose a couple of pounds in water weight real easily on this. Mosquitoes will carry you away, so bring your off or DEET or something, or cutter, bug repellent, and maybe a hat, and maybe sturdy shoes. Even though the trails are decent, there's a little bit of mud here and there. But it's a swamp. It's the furthest west swamp in Texas. And it's got palmettos, which are palm trees no bigger than about this. So it's very green at the moment and very lush. So, Bill, you have a question. Gosh, Bill, what do we have? Never mind, I got it. Bill's asked the question, what do I have planned? Thank you, Bill. Okay, so next month is July. We have Gary. Gary Hook will be speaking, and he will be talking about various aspects of dodging and burning with masks, and just primarily in Lightroom. Aha. Context of a 5-minute edit. He's going to talk about a 5-minute edit. It'll only take him 90 minutes to do that. So, why it takes 90 minutes to talk about 5, but oh well. And then Mr. Bunton will be speaking, continuing on his conversation about file management. Is that a reasonable?
Yeah, the library module in Lightroom and some of the lesser used features that you could find to be very effective to manage your images.
Okay. So that'll be in August. September, we're still probably putting something together, but October and November, I will be speaking one of those on merging images together to make panoramas and or high dynamic range images, things of that nature. Again, I have 90 minutes, so I get to speak on one of those for 10, whatever. But and then December is our get together annual, party. And just to let you know, everybody who's not here, I know you don't care. The table police are coming back on July 1st here at the church. We always have to set the tables up the right way. The table police are coming back on July 1st. They've been away for 6 months. So,
Patrick,
okay, it's an inside joke for those of us who have to put the tables back together. Okay.
Patrick,
Any other things going on?
hello, Patrick.
Hello.
The other show has to be picked up tomorrow.
Oh, which is that? Pflugerville Library? Oh, Pecan Street Cafe needs to be picked up tomorrow.
That'll
Be
at
there
Lake
or have you?
at around 4 o'clock. Since Lake Superior is right over there to my left, I won't be there.
Oh, what you're trying to say is that you're not here in town, young man.
That is correct.
I see. Who did you get permission from the president to be out of town during this period of time when things needed to be taken down?
I have orders from the Queen.
That's right, Patrick.
Oh, okay. You got orders from the Queen. I got it. Never mind.
They won't close at 4 o'clock, so please come.
Okay, so be there. What time do you want to be there, Clay? Okay, 3:30 to 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at the Pecan Street Cafe. Okay, anything else? Going once, going twice. Dave's got something to talk about.
Well, coming up September, October, November, if anybody wants to do any deer pictures, come out to my yard. I got 3.5 acres and I've always got the 6 and 8 point deer fighting and everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'll put corn out and they're always coming in.
Okay.
But, well, yeah, the only catch is you got about an hour and 15-minute drive to get up to where I'm at, up in Port Hood, Copper's Cove.
Okay, so early fall, late summer at Dave Owen's house. Dave and Flora. Flora is allowing Dave to even advertise this. That's very kind of you. I see. It's the first that she's heard of it. Oh my goodness gracious. And you've been married. Never mind. Okay. Okay. So anything else on this? Okay. So at this point in time, I'm going to go sit down and let Roy actually speak instead of just me rambling. So.
Okay. Well, he asked me to tell him things that he could introduce me with that wasn't on my slides. And I said, I'll just make stuff up. He went a little overboard. So I was never a photographer for Prince Charles or anything like that. I have been making money off of photography since about 2008. I was in Houston at that time and I did some photography for real estate agents and some other things, but nothing real serious. I did move to Austin in 2011. And in 2016, I started getting real serious about my photography. I joined the Professional Photographers of America, the Texas Professional Photographers Association, and the Austin PPA, Professional Photographers Association. And before that, I kind of got into cameras and things like that. In the 70s, I was working retail, and I was a sporting goods manager for a department store. And all of a sudden they said, well, we need to replace our camera electronics manager, and we want you to be that. So I kind of knew about stereos and I kind of knew about TVs, but I didn't know a whole lot about cameras. So I had to learn about cameras. And that kind of is what got me into it and everything. And I was in retail for a while. And then in 1980, I decided I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I went back to college, and I went to Texas A&M University, where I got my accounting degree. While I was working for the university, I became a photographer and covered special events as guest speakers and did ads and things like that. So what I learned in my job as camera electronics manager came to some benefit at that time. You know, I've got a little bling on here, and that's basically is represented by these different things. It's kind of what you're awarded through the Professional Photographers Association, which is the largest and oldest organization in the country. They have about 35,000 members. You do not have to be making a living to actually join the organization. It's a good organization to get into because they offer a lot of opportunities on learning and different things. I am a master photographer, master artist, photographic craftsman. I'm a certified professional photographer. I've received the PPA Imaging Excellence Award, and in 25 and 21, I was named Austin Photographer of the Year. Some of my publications was the Photographer Magazine, which is the official magazine of the Texas PPA. I've been in Cowboys and Indians magazine. I've been published in the Houston Chronicle. And I've had a number of my images that have been used by the National Wildlife Federation for their product sales. And in fact, one year, well, actually a couple of years, the president of the organization used an image of my bison in Wyoming in the wintertime as his personal Christmas card that went to all the members. I also own and am the operator of Red Dragon Photography, which I have two locations, one here in Lakeway and the other one in Hearne, Texas. And over the next year, I'm going to be transitioning everything over to Hearne, where I'll be living there full time. I've also started a new business. I don't have a website yet because I just got my LLC on it and getting started. It's Texas Heritage Portrait Atelier, which I'm going to be concentrating on heirloom and heritage quality portraits and restorations. If you want to know what atelier means, it's a French word for meaning charge the crap out of your services. So what we're going to talk about is award-winning images. And some of you may not agree with some of my statements, but that's okay. You know, each to their own. But I don't really consider myself a photographer. I know how to photograph, but a lot of you, one in particular that I know of, probably better photographers than I am. But I do consider myself an artist. I want to create things that make an impact on people. And my camera is just a tool to do that. Just like Photoshop and all of the other add-ons that you can use to enhance your images and everything. So you won't be seeing snapshots from my images. In fact, most of my images are not incomplete the original image. They're a composition of a number of my images, or they've been basically drastically enhanced to become something more than just the photograph that I took originally. You know, with the way cameras are these days, you know, just getting an image out of camera and having it make an impact is not as impressive as it used to do. You know, with eye tracking and auto ISO and all the different settings you can do on the little computers that you're taking pictures with, it's not as hard to get impact images. They are impactful and they are difficult to do, but people just don't see them that way anymore because they can pull out their iPhone and take pictures that are almost as good as what some professional photographers can do. So I feel like you have to do something extra to set your images above and beyond what you would normally see on people just pulling images out of their cameras or their iPhones. So you have to have a photographer's mindset. You have to have a vision, have to have intent, a story, and an emotion to really set your images apart in an image competition. In other words, these things should be planned out before you ever set foot on your location or whatever. Have an idea of what you're trying to do. I know a lot of you do that already with, well, I want to be here at sunrise on such and such a day, or I want to be over here to get the Milky Way with this in the background and everything. And that's the kind of thing that you really need to get into a habit of doing on all your images. Just lost my train of thought. Especially in image competition, they want to see something that they don't normally see on a routine basis and everything. And that, in most cases, doesn't happen very often just by chance and going out there and shooting a couple thousand images and hope you get 3 or 4 that are going to be award-winning images. So the journey is have a concept, pre-visualize it. And I know a lot of photographers actually make a sketch of what they want their image to look like. And they go through and it's just like if they want to do an artist painting or something like that, sketching it out on the paper, and then they want to see what to do as far as filling in all the colors and everything else on there. Then you go out and get the actual capture, you make your selections, and then you develop it, and then you put it in your presentation. In the concept stage, think about what story am I telling? Who's the hero? Or what emotion do I want the viewers to feel? There's a lot of different ways to do that. Impact comes with intent. This is one of my images from Yellowstone. And you want to pre-visualize. You want to see the finished image before you capture. You can use light as a storytelling tool. Golden hour, blue hour, things like that give different emotions and things. One thing that does not give a lot of emotion is 12 o'clock noon on a cloudless day in July. Yeah, you get lots of light, you get high shutter speeds and things like that, but you really don't get any kind of depth or drama in your images. You want to have composition with purpose. Leading lines, balance, framing, negative space, all those can be used in different ways to give the impression that you want to relate in your images. And your lens choice and perspective. Focal length can change the story. Wide angle lens can bring everything in. You're encompassing the whole scene and everything, whereas if you have a telephoto lens and a wide open lens, you can basically concentrate on the subject itself and bring your audience's attention right exactly where you want them to focus on. And then the capture stage, you want to execute the vision. This is a family that I photographed out between here and Hearn, and basically getting everything to that spot at that time and everybody together with the full cotton crop and his harvester in the background and everything takes planning. And we had to actually attempt it a couple times just because of the different weather conditions and everything else. But that's an example of planning things out, knowing what elements you need to have in what position and at what time. Time and anticipation, especially if you're into wildlife or things like that. You know, you need to know your subject. You need to know their habits. You need to know what to expect so that you can be there when the shot comes, because these animals will not wait for you to pose and take the picture you want. You have to be ready and to go. Even in the studio, you know, getting a cat to sit still for more than a few minutes takes a lot of patience and also a lot of being ready whenever they strike the right pose and you've got the light and everything else in the right positions to take advantage of that. This is one of my shots from a number of years ago in Southwest Colorado. It took me 4 days to get that image. I knew the cat's habits. I knew about what time it was going to be going through, you know, basically the path that it was taking and everything. But 3 of those days, it was over and done before I had my camera up, you know. So you have to really work at it and try to make sure that you're at the right time. Same way if you're like doing sporting events or things like that. You need to be familiar with the sport to where when the rider makes that last turn and is going to be headed home, you want to get the best possible image that you can showing the action that's up there with the rider focusing on where they're going to go and the horse focusing on where it is at the time to make sure it doesn't stumble or run into anything. And again, too, just waiting for the right time of day, right? Waiting for the right light. And then select the strongest frame. You know, in most events, sporting events, wildlife, anything where there's action, you want to have your camera on a continuous setting to where you're taking multiple images all at the same time so that when you're done with the capture, you can go through and you can basically try to get the best image you can that you want to select and use then. How long am I supposed to talk? If anybody has any questions, that's just hold up your hand and we can go as we go along. There'll also be time at the end and everything. What? Okay.
How many pictures of the cat did you take before you got that one?
The one in the studio?
Yeah, the one in the studio. I was just curious. That's such a nice one too.
Well, fortunately, it was a cat that was, you know, and I do a lot of cats, mainly because my daughter has 5 of them, and a lot of those are my subjects and things. But one thing, and dogs work this way too. Put them in the studio, let them go for a while, let them get familiar, let them get comfortable, because this is all new to them and everything. So they're going to want to check everything out. And once they get comfortable and start getting a little tired and everything, then you can put them in the position and you start dangling the little feather up there and, you know, give them the treat. You know, one thing you do is, especially this works better with dogs, and cats don't care much, but when the flash goes off, you know, one thing to do with the dogs, if they're skittish and they're not familiar with that, is do the flash a few times beforehand, and every time you flash, give them a treat. That way they know the flash is a good thing and they're expecting something good at it, and their whole expression and everything else is more pleasing and happy than it is surprised and so forth. But I don't know, I probably took about 30 or 40. I mean, it was more than just a few. But again, too, you know, yes, thank you. In the old days, in the days of film, you know, you had, if you had a medium format camera, you know, you had 12 exposures to work with. If you had a 35 millimeter, you had 24 and 36. You better be a good photographer with those kind of things, because also you couldn't look at the back of the camera and go, well, yeah, I got that and everything. So doing the, you know, 30 frames per second and type sequences like that wasn't an option at the time. So you had to be a little bit better at your craft. But, and I see too many times that photographers relax on their actual craft of being a good photographer and being able to limit the number of pictures. You know, they'll go out and take 3,000 or 4,000 pictures of a single event and everything. Oh, I can go through here and I'm bound to get some good and everything. Whereas, you know, if you use some of the skills of anticipation and positioning and composition in your camera and everything, you're going to end up not having to go through as much culling and everything when you get your images back and so forth. But let's talk about going from raw to a final image. This is at Smith Oaks Rookery a few years ago, and it actually ended up being one of my highest award-winning images. But just as a matter of curiosity, can anybody tell me what they would do with this image?
Crop it.
Crop it, number one, yes.
It's hard to see what
Remove outside
too
birds.
many birds. I would focus more on the central bird action.
Exactly. You know, basically the story is right in the middle there. You know, that's what you're looking for. You want a story. You know, there are so many distracting elements in this photo. You know, all the other white birds and everything. You know, anything light or white in your picture is going to draw the attention of the observer's eye. So if it's not the subject, the place where you want the image or the person's eye to go to, you want to get rid of it. You know, there's all these white elements back in here, and the background is very distracting and everything. So you're going to kind of see the extreme that I will go to get an image. So this is my final image. And it's hard to see here, but I've actually got leaves and things in the background. They're just not as prominent as what they were in the original image. But the story behind this is custody dispute. And in image competition, you want to have a good title because you want to draw the judge into the image immediately to where they can connect with it. And a good title will do that. You know, especially if it's humorous. You know, if an image is flashed up in competition and the judges start laughing, you're already 50% to getting an award for the image and everything because you connected with the judge. And so then they don't look as hard for all the faults and everything else in the image. Whereas if they don't connect with, they spend their time looking at what's wrong with the image rather than what's right. And that's not really fair, but that's what happens. You know, that's the way it goes. Then you get to the development philosophy. It's enhance and don't rescue. You know, like I said, I use a tremendous amount of Photoshop and Photoshop attachments and things in my images and things. Because again, too, I look at the computer as another tool along with the camera of my artwork or my image. But the thing about it is, you got to have a good image in the first place. You know, if it's not sharp, if it's not well exposed, where you got a proper exposure, you're going to spend most of your time just trying to correct the things you should have done right in the camera in the first place. So, you know, make sure that when you're capturing things, you say, oh, I'll fix that in Photoshop later and everything. You know, that'll work sometimes, but most of the time, you know, again, too, you're going to be spending a lot of time on your computer when you could actually be working on other images and things. But the key word is enhance. You know, you basically want to take what's there and make it better and improve it as much as you can, because at least as far as client work and everything, they don't care what you did. They don't care whether you use Photoshop or not. They just want a good final image. And therefore, that should be the goal, and use whatever tools you need to or can use to get to that final image that the client will use and keep hopefully forever. And global adjustments, you know, exposure, contrast, color, crop. A lot of you probably use Lightroom. I wish I knew Lightroom, but I basically use Adobe Bridge and Camera Raw for my initial enhancements. But I do most of the basic adjustments or changes in that before I actually go into Photoshop and finish it up and everything. But all those are, and in a lot of competitions, you can actually do these adjustments. Whereas when you go into Photoshop and you start removing elements or adding things or doing things like that, those are not allowed in a lot of image competition. Dodging, burning, masking, a lot of that can also be done in Lightroom and Camera Raw. But that's all things, because the camera does not have the high dynamic range that your eyes do. Your eyes see a whole lot more colors, you know, tones and things like that than your camera does. So sometimes you have to make those adjustments yourself for the things that the camera can't do on the initial exposure. And you want to guide the eye. The visual pathways and attention control. I've seen it so many times in image competition where a judge will look at an image and they say, well, I don't know what to look at. You know, especially on landscapes and things. They'll look at a landscape and they'll look at it and they'll go, well, I don't see a center of attention. Well, the center of attention is the whole thing. But, you know, they still want to see something that will give them some kind of, again, connection into the image and everything. But even not landscapes, you know, people, animals, other things, you want to make sure that your audience is directed where you want them to go, where you intend them to see what you want them to see in the image. And you also want to create emotional impact. It's just like the initial image with the school bus and the cowboy bringing his daughter home from school. That's something that, especially with a woman judge, will connect immediately, you know, and that in itself will, again, to gain you points with a judge is if you can get them emotionally into the picture and into your story. Another example of using light and things, yeah, to direct the viewer to where you want them to go. Now, there's also a street scene and things back here, but like I said, this doesn't show up as well as it actually is. Retouching decisions. What stays and what goes? Yes. Sure.
Back to,
Oop.
oops, back to the black and white.
Yeah, let's see if we,
One
yeah,
more.
one more.
There you go. Is this a studio shot or is it actually a street shot that you did?
That is a composition.
It's a composition? How do you mean?
Well,
Oh,
the original image did not have a night scene there. It actually was a daylight scene. And, you know, it had the window light coming in, which created that and everything. And that, to me, did not tell enough of a story. You know, usually when you got a gangster or whatever he's supposed to be on the lookout, it's going to be at night because that's when he's expected the cops or his rivals and everything come. So I took another picture of a street scene with the light in the background and combined the two.
I always find myself trying to get pixel perfect. Where do you make that adjustment? And how
The what
do you-
now?
When you make a composition with those two, I find myself zooming in and trying to get pixel perfect, eliminating the boundary between the two. How do you play with that?
Well, I mean, there are composition rules and everything, like the rules of thirds and, you know, trying to things like that. So it's just kind of, what do you have in mind? You know, what's the picture in your mind that you want to create? And that's what I talked about before, as far as having somewhat of a plan or a visualization of what you want out of it and everything. So I don't know if you were talking about the composition, is that right? Or
The-
Yeah, usually, let me go back.
So how do you blend that together?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Oops, other direction.
did I lose it?
No,
Nope.
right there.
Oh, there we go. You know, and usually you don't get away with it too much of having a picture split in half, which is basically what happens there and everything. But I'll tell you one fault in this more than anything else is I should have had the whole gun barrel showing and everything. That's not a good place to cut it off and everything. And I barely, that was brought out in the competition, but everything else they liked so much that they kind of overlooked it and everything. But basically, by having him on that side, it's kind of like, well, I'm on the inside and whatever he's looking for is out on the outside. So really the street scene in that is as much part of the story as the person themselves. So that kind of was the decision there is both parts are important.
But technically, joining them together, how do you deal with where they connect?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Just improving your Photoshop skills. One good thing about Photoshop now is the harmonization. And black and white's a whole lot easier to work with than color. Because a lot of times when you're doing composition and things, you're getting into different color grades and everything else, and you have to harmonize that and make sure that, you don't have morning light on one part of your composition and evening light on another part of the composition and everything. But with the window having a hard edge, it was a lot easier that way because you didn't have any real transition. There is a natural divide between the window and the room that he's in. So it was actually a lot easier to blend that in than what you normally would think.
Did you match focal length and aperture?
On that, yes, I tried to as much as possible. So on retouching decisions, what stays and what goes. This is the raw image and everything. And, right off the bat, it's a pretty decent photo, as far as the subject and the things in there. But there's a lot of distracting elements in there. All the branch, everything else, this is taking you out of the picture. This is taking you out of the picture. This one is distracting and coming into the neck of the image and everything. So especially, and a lot of these rookeries and things like at Smith Oaks and everything, it's very difficult to find a nest that doesn't have something in front of it. And so, you have to be kind of prepared to do that. So you have to think about what you want to remove and what you want to leave in there. But my basic philosophy on doing an image for competition is if it's not important in the image, get rid of it. No matter what it is, if it doesn't add or is important to the whole image, then get it out of there and get rid of it. And then you have to get into the competition thinking, how judges view images. And basically in the PPA, Professional Photographers of America competition, and pretty much all of their affiliates like Texas and Austin and some of the other guilds, these are the 12 elements that they use to judge an image for competition. It's impact, which is basically how does it hit you when you first see it? And that is, again, too, half the battle in image competition is making an impact on the judge. If it's something they've seen a lot or the technique that they've seen a lot, then everything else had better be really good. I remember when HDR first came out back in the 2000s and everything. Basically, if you had an HDR image in competition, you automatically were going to get a high score if it was done fairly well and everything, because at that time it was something new and the judges had not seen a whole lot of. So it made a big impact on them. Now I see very, very few HDR images in competitions because, you know, the judges have seen thousands of them. It doesn't, you know, the technique and the impact is not as great with them as it used to be. Creativity, you know, again, too, doing something that that appeals to them they haven't seen much. Your style, composition is a big factor. Presentation, we'll get into that in a little bit. Color balance. One automatic disqualification in image competition is if you have color balance that's off, especially like with people on skin tones and things like that. You want to have a center of interest. The judges want to have to know where to look or where they're supposed to look in the image. Lighting, you know, side lighting adds drama and gives depth to a subject. Subject matter, technique, storytelling. Storytelling kind of fits in with the center of interest and the impact, and technical excellence. You know, if it's not done, it doesn't matter how much good of a story, how unusual it is, if it's not technically excellent, it's going to get you disqualified. And I've seen so many great images disqualified or not get a good score because of sensor spots in the background that they missed, or haloing when they've done a cutout, or things like that, that basically as a professional photographer, you don't want those kind of images going to your clients. So therefore you want to make sure they're not in your competition images. So we're going to do a little study here on concept to print. This is the initial image that I took I think that was in Montana. Might have been wild, but I believe it was Montana. Anyway, so what's the first thing you do? Well, you get rid of the cowboy in the background because he's not part of the story. He doesn't add anything to the story. He's a distraction. So that's the first thing you do, is get rid of the cowboy in the background. Then you go and you crop it. Well, let's try a portrait orientation here. Well, looks a little tight. You know, there's a lot of action going on there. So, you know, you want to give a little space to what's going on there and everything, and not have everything so closed in. So let's try landscape orientation and move it to black and white. Because there's a lot of things in the background. The color just didn't really appeal to me too much. So I decided, well, let's make this a black and white image. But then we're going, okay, what about the composition here? You know, the person's eye comes in from the left side of the image, goes to the subject, and if there's nothing to stop it, then it goes out the other side. Yes.
So you did the crop, a vertical crop. Okay. So are you keeping within the basic 8x10, 11x14, 16:20 styles of cropping, or are you cropping to where your eye is comfortable?
Well, fortunately, with digital images being the norm in image competition now, it doesn't matter unless you're going to print it later on, whether it fits to 8x10 or whatever. You basically want to print. You basically want to crop that gives the most pleasing aspect to the story. So anyway, decided. So we're going, like I said, in a normal viewing of a photo, you come in from left to right, you get to the image, but then with the horse and the subject looking off to the right, your eye kind of then goes out of the picture. So I go, okay, let's change that around and let's move it to the other side. And that way, your eye comes in, goes to the subject, and then it's drawn back into the picture and more or less stays there. But wait a minute, we've got to do something about that barrel because all of a sudden all the writing is the wrong way. So we fixed the barrel. But I'm still not liking the whole concept of the image here. You know, even though that's the way it was and everything, I felt like it could be a better image if the horse and rider were moved further away. And that way it gives a little more space in the whole thing, and just to me gives a whole lot better composition here. And then we move it to the final image with a little vignette around the side, around the edges and everything, to bring all the focus in to the subject and the action that's going on there. Any comments about, yes?
First of all, where were you as a photographer? Were you down in the arena?
Yes, I was. You know, this was basically a practice rodeo. People were out there practicing for the rodeo and everything. So we were able to get access and just, you know, we could go basically anywhere we wanted to. But I just photographed a rodeo up in West Texas last weekend before last. It was the Wild Horse Prairie Days Rodeo in Haskell, Texas. That's about 50 miles north of Abilene. And it's an actual ranch rodeo where they bring in cowboys from different ranches and they compete doing ranch chores. That, you know, there was no bull riding because you don't ride bulls out on the real ranch and everything. So they were competing in branding and of course bronc riding and calf separation, different things that they actually, you know, they had 4-6's ranch there, they had XIT ranch, they had some of the biggest ranches around, and it's got the cowboys from those ranches competing. Now, because of the small town, there's maybe 400 or 500 spectators, and they really don't care about photographers and everything, so I could be right at the fence and right at the eye level with the competitors and everything.
My second question has to do with the fact that you moved that barrel. I mean, when she's barrel riding, she's trying to get as close as she can. So how do you deal with that aspect of the professional rider?
Well, you just hope that one of the judges don't know that. To point that out. But yeah, I agree with you
She
completely.
gets points.
Yeah.
I mean, she's graded on that or judged on that
Exactly.
in her competition.
But my goal was not photojournalism. I was not there to put a photo in the paper or anything like that. My goal was to create a piece of art or an award-winning photo, and basically moving it, even though it's not true to the picture, brings about a more dynamic and pleasing image, and that was my goal. And yeah, every time, well, I don't enter this one anymore, but every time I'm going, I hope they don't know about barrel racing. Yes.
Did you try a square format or you kept that 8x10?
I kept the landscape format. You know, this is actually goes all the way back here and everything and stuff, because this way, you know, they're all looking this way, the action's moving this way, so you want space for them to go into and everything. You don't want to cut off their space, because what it does is it decreases the feeling of the action then and everything. It's just like if you were photographing airplanes or things like that, you know, you don't want your F-16 right in the middle of the image and everything. You want it a little bit too away from the direction that it's going, so that it has space to fly into and everything. So that's just things to consider there. Any other questions? So, presentation. I have said, you know, one of the elements in a PPA competition is presentation. And basically what that means is a digital mat. And so if you don't put a mat on there, or if you put one that distracts away from the image rather than serving its purpose, you know, it's not going to help you out much. So you can take a normal image like this, that's, you know, you might go out and print that and everything, but then you want to add, and it's difficult to see here because it's a dark mat, but there's two parts of a normal presentation, at least in the image competition that I'm in. There's your wide portion, which the best thing to do is take some color out of the image itself to match up to that mat. You know, you unless you have something like, I don't know, architectural or fashion or something to where you want an all white or all black mat. Usually you don't want an all white or all black mat, because in a case like this, if you had an all black mat, then basically it starts to make the darks in the image look muddy, because the image itself is not part of the darkest areas there. Same way with the whites and everything. If you use an all white mat, then your light areas and things start to look too contrasty and everything. So the best thing to do is to use your color sampler and sample a dark part of the image, or a light part if you're going to have a light mat, and use that as your main digital mat. And then for what they call a stroke line, which is a very small image, or a very small thin line. And basically the purpose of the stroke line is to contain the image within its element. And again, too, you don't want something that's overpowering, because if it's the lightest part of the image, it's going to take away from the rest of the image. Any questions about presentations? Because that's the thing I see more than anything else about new people in image competition, is they don't know about the presentation. Now, not all competitions talk about that. I'm mainly speaking to the PPA and its affiliates type competition.
Roy, I've seen matting get really complex, mimicking multi-mats and textures on the mat, and even part of an image carried out into a mat. Is that a worthwhile endeavor?
It has to be done really, really, really well, and it has to enhance the image. My philosophy on that is you're more likely going to end up hurting yourself than helping yourself. You know, it can be done, and I've seen it done very, very well. But like I said, it really has to be pulled off perfectly. Otherwise, judge is going to comment about, well, my eye keeps going to the border and everything. You know, you don't want it, you want it enhancing the image, not distracting away from it. You know, a common mistake is technical perfection without emotional impact. There are a lot of times when a really, really technically well done image can do well in competition. You know, I've seen it like with birds, where you can see every feather detail and everything, and it's just, you know, they know it's a subject that's moving and everything else. So getting a perfectly exposed and in focus image is difficult to do. So sometimes you can get away with that, but otherwise, technical perfection is kind of a basic expected thing from the judges. They expect it to be technically perfect. They want the other things that make it above and beyond the other images, like the storytelling and things like that.
I have a question.
Yes.
In contests that you are working with and different organizations, do they have beginner or basic, intermediate, and advanced? We use those class distinctions with our club membership. We think it encourages people to try, you know,
Yes.
and if they win everything, then we move them up to the advanced. But in your contest, how do you handle experience?
No, they don't. You know, it's basically everybody's on the same level and everything. I started competing in 2017. In fact, we had at our Austin PPA meeting the other evening, we had some of our master photographers that were on a panel, and people could come and ask them questions and everything. And one thing that we did was, like for me, I took some of my first images that I did in competition and displayed those. And then I put some of the images from now and everything. And I mean, there's like that much difference in everything. It's frustrating, and discouraging when you first start out. But if you keep at it and you keep doing the things you're supposed to do, then you will see improvement. And it doesn't take you long to figure out what the judges are looking for. And basically, even as a amateur or inexperienced photographer, you know a good image when you see one, most of the time. But after looking at competition and watching competition and things, then you start to pick up on the other things that the judges are looking for. Don't block the shadows. Don't blow out the highlights. You know, in backgrounds and things. Don't have banding and things. Don't have halos around and things. And once you get those technical aspects kind of down and everything, then you can start working on the other things. But the key there is in the old judging system, they had a score format to where it was basically 0 to 100, although nobody ever gets below a 70. If you do, then you know you shouldn't have that image in there. But a 70 is basic. 70 to 75 is considered. 70 to 74 is considered average. And this is average among professional photographers. It doesn't mean average among the whole general population and everything. And when people see that average, they go, oh, you know, I'm only average and everything. Well, you're an average professional photographer. And 75 to 79 is above average. And again, too, people, they hate the dreaded 79 because, you know, they're going, oh, that's not quite good enough. But again, too, it's above average among professional photographers. What you really want is the 80 and above. And 80 to 84 is a merit. And most of the things that merits are used for is you have to accumulate a certain number of those in image competition in order to get these degrees and things. So, really, even a fairly inexperienced but talented photographer can go in there and with a little work and a little training and instruction, they can get at least 80s and things. And they might can build up into the 90s and 100s and everything. But it's like I said, if you're know your camera and you take good pictures and everything, then you can compete in image competition. It's just the other things that you have to start to become aware of and incorporate into your images and things. So you analyze an image using the thought process. Where is this going? Oh, okay. So again, too, you know, taking an image like this, what would you do with it?
Clean up the sticks, especially the one in front of the bird.
Absolutely. Number one, very distracting background. Don't care much for the color and the lighting on that and everything. So then again, too, this is kind of where your skills on a computer come into. So this is what I finally ended up with as far as my competition image. And you can see I took out a lot of the sticks and things, and also changed the direction of light and so forth to give it some more depth and drama.
Please go back to your original. Ah, okay.
See, it only takes an Aggie till the end of the problem to figure this thing out.
Aha. From back here, you can't see the bird on the left is actually looking at the bird on the right, left.
Oh, really?
The two are not.
Yeah.
It's the bird.
Well, I didn't change them at all.
Yeah.
You know, but basically that branch right in the middle, I think, was creating that distraction. Huh? I still didn't hear it all.
How much time did you put into making this image?
I'm at the point now with my Photoshop skills, it doesn't take too long, but I probably spent probably at least 10 hours on that.
Oh, that's it. That's quick.
Well, fortunately, they're always coming out, Topaz and Nick and those side programs, they keep getting better and better and better. And they keep making it easier to do things like that. Now, there is in competition rules, on a normal basis, you can use those add-on programs, the AI programs and everything. You cannot use any program where you have to put a prompt in. That's basically the dividing line, is that if you use a prompt, that disqualifies the image. But if you go into Nick, or you go into Topaz, or you go into On One or something like that, and use those different add-ons where you don't prompt them, then that is allowed in most competitions. Although in the annual competition for PPA, which is IPC, International Print Competition, a number of categories to where only minor adjustments in either raw or the other one, are allowed in things. And actually, you have to send the original raw file with your entry in those competitions. Now, the other ones like Austin PPA and Texas PPA, you don't have to send the image in that. But if they ask for it, you have to have it available in case they wonder, oh, is that AI or what is that and everything. And also they have what they call a reportage or reportage category, which is basically, that's a raw image and that's what you submit, no changes or anything. So I would like to give you a challenge, and I would like you to go out and I would like you to visualize and basically plan your image ahead of time on just one image this month, and basically start getting into that habit to where, okay, this is the photo I want to get. And like I said, you've probably done that many times already, especially like in landscapes, of being in a certain place at a certain time to get the sun in a certain place and everything else and so forth. So, but anyway, just start getting into that habit of, instead of just going out and taking pictures of an event or something like that, you kind of plan it out a little bit.
So the club's competition category next month for August is minimalism. And it does have a certain look to it. Can you give us some pointers, or maybe take an image and talk about how to make it look more minimalistic or fit that category?
I don't have any images that I can use, I think, to do that, but
what does it mean to you, that category?
well, I mean, are you talking about macro, or I'm not sure what you mean by that. Maybe that needs to be defined.
We do have a definition, and we have a page for the themes, and they have been described. Bill, did you describe the minimalism one? Who did that one?
Description. I'm looking in here to find what's on the website. Let me look at the website.
Okay.
Get you what we published.
Yeah, look on our descriptive page for the theme. There's a Facebook. Yeah, there's a Facebook group for that minimalism. Facebook group often has real discussions. Could people put up a picture and somebody in the comments says, that's not minimalism. So, because it's got a couple of different subjects in it, not enough white space,
well,
you got it?
I got it. Our definition for this competition: minimalism. Wow. Minimalism in photography is all about getting rid of visual clutter and stripping the subject down to the bare essentials, whether the image is abstract or subject-oriented. It utilizes clean, sparse compositions with ample negative space, minimal color palettes, and simple, often geometric shapes to create a strong, often calming visual impact. Or, put another way, It emphasizes simplicity, focusing on the few important elements in a composition.
Hmm,
So a lot of your images there, fill that category.
okay. I didn't even know I was using that genre there.
Any thoughts? Any thoughts?
Um, I don't know, maybe like a statue or something like that. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that one.
I think Bill and who was with you again? Bill and Mark Inarati, and you went to Japan and you took snow pictures, and you submitted several of them that have snow and a little
Roy, I think
house
you've
and
seen my tracks image. It's
Yeah.
very sparse. Snow, just a little bit of twig sticking through the snow, a building, and a few tracks.
The only thing I can think of as far as any image I might have done that might fit in that is I have a image from Yellowstone in the winter where, you know, most of the picture is all snow and everything. And then about, you know, just in one small portion of the upper right-hand frame or part of the image is a bull elk just laying in the snow there. And that's the only thing in the whole scene is just the elk resting in the snow. So, I don't know. So anyway, the camera is just a tool. The image is created by the photographer's visions, decisions, and persistence from concept to print. And let me just say, back up a little bit, because not all of your great images have to be pre-planned. But whenever you have taken a number of images and you're going through and you're culling your images and looking for images, keep those other concepts in mind. Not just how is the image as it is right there, but what can I do with that? What can I do to improve and enhance and put that image over the top? So, questions and discussions? Yes. Well, he asked what is my favorite part of the process, you know, taking the picture, editing the picture, and so forth. I guess the editing, the enhancing, and just basically seeing what I can do with an image. You know, I love taking the picture, but you know, I'm 75 years old, so I can't go and sit 5 days in a blind in, you know, Southwest Colorado or take a hike through Yellowstone or something like that and everything. I'm kind of limited on my mobility and everything now. So, but you know, I didn't have to do a whole lot of moving around or anything when I photographed the rodeo, and I had a great time doing the actual photos and everything. But the other thing is when I'm taking the picture, because of the small viewfinders and everything, I had a stroke about 4 months ago, and it's kind of affected my vision somewhat to where I don't see as clearly and everything. So a lot of times I don't know what kind of pictures I really have until I get them on the big screen computer at home. So going through there and basically looking at each image and seeing what can you do with that? You know, what do you need to do and what can you do to elevate that image and everything? It's probably my favorite part.
in the contests that you work with, do they have categories for drone photography, aerial photography?
They have aerial photography. And because there's not a whole lot of them in there, if it's done pretty well, it usually scores pretty well.
Also, the new cameras, the Insta360s, the 360-degree camera photos where you can look all around. Do they have a category for that, or is that something that?
Not that I know of. I haven't seen anything on that yet. You know, maybe a coming thing and everything.
Roy, you might want to talk about the different categories at Texas PPA annual competition. They've got a pretty wide range of areas that you can enter in. For example, there's reportage, There's sports fits with reportage. I think there's a class for AI generated images.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
Terry's
Yes.
the only one that's hurt me up there.
Well, let me get into that a little bit. Now IPC, which is the big annual contest for PPA, I think it's open now, and I think the deadline is something like September 18th. But what they do in that, they have like 20 something categories, and it's like last year the yearly theme was wild birds, and this year the yearly theme is flowers. But they've got boudoir, they've got maternity, they've got natural nature, which means not a whole lot of changes and everything. And then they've got illustrative natures, which means you can basically do anything you want to. They've got natural portrait and illustrated portrait. They've got sports, got a whole bunch of categories. Now this competition is a little bit different in the fact that what they do is they have different rounds of judging, kind of like the NCAA men's basketball tournament, is they go through each category on the first round and they pick out the top 32 images. And anybody that gets in that category is guaranteed at least a bronze medal. And being in the top 32 out of 400 or 500 entries in that category is not bad and everything. Well, then in the Imaging USA, which is held every January, this next year it's going to be in North Carolina. It's kind of the national convention of PPA. Then they go through the subsequent rounds. So in each category, they'll take the #1 ranked image and they'll put it head to head against the number 32 and have the judges judge them, and whoever wins goes on to the next round. And they keep going, just like the men's basketball tournament, where you get into the Elite Eight and then the Final Four and everything else. And if you get the top image in a category, you get a diamond award plus $1,000. And if you get the Grand Imaging Award, which is the top image of all of them, then you get $10,000. So, but it's kind of interesting because you're not really going for a score. You're just going, well, I want to be in the top 32, and then I want to be in the top 16 and so forth. And again, too, if you stop at the top 16, you get a silver medal. And if you stop at the top 8, you get a gold medal and so forth. So it's a very interesting competition. But like I said, there's at least 20 something categories so there's something there for anybody. And the one thing about that competition is even if you do a composite, every single part of that composite has to be a photo you took. You cannot bring in anything from the outside and put it in there. And you have to provide your raw images along with the entry to prove that that is your photographs and things. Now, one thing that Bill was talking about at the Texas PPA competition, which is usually in February and March, they have probably a lot more categories than that. And they give a lot of awards and things, best newcomer and all that kind of thing. They had 2 new categories this year. Well, they weren't new this year, they were new last year. But AI generated image, and then I forget what the exact terminology was, but you could take basically one of your photos and incorporate it into an AI image with a prompt and everything. And that's a little thorny issue with me because I don't think those categories belong in a photography contest, because I entered a couple in the AI category and I got what they call the Texcellence Award, which is the highest award in a category. And one of the prompts that I put was genie in a bottle, and the other prompt I put was Pandora's box. And my image is scored at the top and everything. And I won't be wearing that award anytime because I just did it for the heck of it, just to see what would happen and everything. But I guess just like Photoshop back in the end of the last century and everything, when that came in and people thought that was going to kill photography and everything, just like that's been incorporated as a tool in your photographic process, I believe that AI also may have a fit somewhere in the photographic process, especially if the end result is you're giving your clients a whole lot better images that they would get normally. Anything else?
Do you have places in Austin that you recommend for classes or learning, ACC or other? Since you stress education in your presentation, where would you recommend?
Well, in Austin, you know, Precision Camera obviously has classes all the time. You know, that's one good place. Austin PPA has workshops occasionally and things. We had Rick Lewis from Atlanta at Precision Camera weekend before last, and he's a top, you know, fashion photographer that does a lot of creativity and things. The one thing I like more than anything is, how many people have heard of Texas School? Texas School. Okay. Texas School is put on once a year. It's usually the last week of April. It's put on by the Texas Professional Photographers Association. And what they do is they bring in like 35 of the top photographers and instructors and everything from around the country, and you can select one class to take for a whole week. And it's everything. It's, you know, portraits, it's Photoshop, it's landscapes, it's basically how to start a photography business, it's how to keep your business going. You know, it's all different kind of classes. And you were with one instructor for 5 days. And just an example, on a normal year, they'll have 1,000 photographers there from all 50 states and usually 7 to 10 countries and everything. It is the top photography school in the world. And, you know, it's real easy to join TPPA and go to that class and everything. But, you know, once you go, you don't ever want to miss it again. But that's a very good place to get specific instruction. And I know Bill and Evelyn have been going for quite some time, and
It's always worthwhile to go to Texas School. And it's not just the class, it's the people you meet and the contacts you make while you're there.
yeah, the relationships you build and everything are worth a whole lot too. And it's not just class, you know, they have parties, they have all different kind of things and stuff you can do. So that's another place you can go for class and everything. You know, one thing that that made a real difference in my photographic journey as far as the editing and enhancing and everything is I picked a couple top instructors, Richard Sturdivant and Shannon Squires and also Sandra Pierce. And you can arrange to take individual lessons by Zoom from them. And those people know their business, and they are very, very good. But there's other people like that. So there's always YouTube. You know, YouTube can give you, especially if you've got a specific area that you want to work on or learn or things like that, then there's a lot of those videos out there that you can take.
For focusing on something you want to learn, chat is also one of the AI engines, is a good way to do the search to find what you're looking for. I've asked chat to find me a video on how to do some particular task, and it'll point at a YouTube video.
Well, another thing you can do with ChatGPT, and like I said, this is where it might become incorporated into your repertoire of tools for photography, is you can put an image into ChatGPT and you can say, how do I go through the steps in Photoshop to add backlighting and such to this image, and, you know, tell it the effect you want to get. And it'll go in and tell you all the different steps in Photoshop on how to do that. Okay, no more questions? Well, thank you all for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I think a lot of this group, it's too bad I'm way on the other side of town, can't make it here on a regular basis.
Roy, thank you very much.
Welcome.
I'm sure we all learned something.